All right, so we've got Dan Orlovsky from ESPN from some of the morning shows here on One Bills Drive. I love listening to Dan. He does a great job on ESPN. He's always very balanced in his analysis of Josh Allen. Let's hear what he's got to say about Buffalo going into the last week of the season.
And maybe one or two other players. But I guess my question to you, Dan, is how can the field-stretching exploits of Brandon Cooks and putting that on film this past week help them going forward against future opponents and keeping them honest?
I think that's a big deal. And they don't need two of those, three of those a game. If they can get one of them a game, it's huge. But putting it on tape is a big deal because everybody has been, and rightfully said, this team can't stretch the field vertically. I've been on this show with you guys talking about it's great, the tight ends and the backs, but it's still just a horizontal stretch. Now, and I think, one, he's put it on tape, but two, it's also his reputation. Everyone knows Cooks has been a very successful player for years in the NFL now. And so you have to, he's got the reputation, the cachet, and I'm not telling everybody he's Odell Beckham from his heyday, but it's still now defensively, teams will have to say, hey, when Cooks is on the field, we got to make sure we stay on top because if we're not.
That's exactly right. Cooks adds that dimension to the team. I'm glad he finally caught a few balls down the field. He does have that reputation. He has a long career in the NFL. He played great ball with Drew Brees back in the day, was a big target down the field for them, played for the Rams and helped get them to a Super Bowl, was an excellent downfield threat for the Rams, played for the Patriots, and I believe also helped get them to a Super Bowl, was also a very, very elite downfield threat. Guy still has a lot of speed. He can catch the ball. He's almost kind of the right fit for us, too, because in our offense, it really is kind of just a role player that we need because they don't want to, McDermott and the Bills, they really don't want to run a vertical offense, per se. They don't want to run a lot of vertical routes. The vertical routes that you see in our offense are typically just clear out routes. But the problem with vertical routes that are clear out routes is if the defense doesn't respect the receiver that's clearing out, then they're not going to play deep. They're just gonna play under that because they're not worried about really having us go over the top. Cooks adds that dimension. He's excellent. He was great in the last game. Hopefully he keeps it up in the playoffs and doesn't get the drops.
They will throw him the ball down the field. So I do think that just creates some more space. We also haven't seen, a healthy Kincaid or a somewhat impactful Kincaid and Cooks really on the field that much. And so I think that's another element to this offense that I'm intrigued about and excited about. And so I think.
Yeah, Kincaid, they say the best ability is availability. He's often injured this year, last year. Hopefully he's back for the playoffs and actually can add and contribute to the team. But, honestly, I feel like they should run Keon Coleman in a lot of those routes because Keon Coleman and Dalton Kincaid, to me, are the same thing. They're big, slow, pass-catching wide receivers, basically, or tight ends. You can put whatever label on them you want. Unfortunately, with Keon Coleman, it feels like it's more of a personality and a discipline conflict with the team. So even if they do see that ability, at this point, the bridge is pretty much, it feels like the bridge is burned. They're not really going to use him. When they do use him, they're using him. They're trying to make him a boundary receiver. He's not that. He's more like Kincaid. He's a big, slow, pass-catching wide receiver. He does that well. If you can get him over the middle of the field against linebackers in a mismatch, you got a chance there. Keon Coleman would be probably an excellent tight end, like a Dalton Kincaid type, though, not a Jackson Hawes type. He's not going to be blocking on defensive ends, but he can work the middle of the field.
Cooks being healthy and having the ability to at least stretch the field once a game, twice a game is really meaningful. I agree with you, Chris, on the defensive perspective. I said this Monday morning. I love where the defense is. I love it. I think this run defense is.
I think love is maybe too strong of a word. We don't get enough sacks, and we don't really pressure the quarterback enough with blitzes and pressure packages. We only really pressure the quarterback in the second half of the game when we're trying to make up ground, kind of a break glass in case of emergency. We're very vanilla. I think we're running nickel defense like 90 to 95% of the time, nickel and dime defense, where you got basically 4 down linemen and 2 linebackers. They don't bring enough pressure. They don't put enough heat on. They don't take the ball away enough, which is kind of a symptom of not having enough pressure when you talk about complementary football. So it's another area. I wouldn't say I love the defense. I'd say the defense is coming around. I don't love it, and I really don't love it because of the programming. Honestly, it's, again, a very conservative, very vanilla approach. Typically in the first half of games, like, hey, let's see what the team is going to try to do to us. They keep it very vanilla. They try to get pressure with their front four, and typically what they do is they dig themselves into a hole. And that's why you see we have to get very aggressive in the second half of games to try to come back. Honestly, if the coach was more of a dog, he would have that mentality earlier in the game. Maybe there would be a drive or two where you would see what the other team wants to kind of do to us, but you would adjust on the fly. You would bring pressure earlier in the game. Like, think about like Steve Spagnuolo, Spags in Kansas City, how he goes into big games with pressure packages specific for that game. I would implement those earlier in the game. I wouldn't be waiting for the third quarter or the fourth quarter to try to bring heat, especially when you're playing young quarterbacks, especially this year when you're playing young quarterbacks like Drake May that are going to be making their first appearance in the playoffs. I would be fast. I would be physical. I would have design blitz packages like Spags would have. Look, I've seen Spagnuolo put together blitz packages that stifled the NFL MVP Josh Allen last year in the championship game, okay? It wasn't his first rodeo. If a good blitz package, if a good pressure package can stifle an NFL MVP caliber quarterback like Josh Allen, those things should be implemented earlier in games. We should not be playing to keep the game close, right? We should be playing to try to boat race these teams. Try to go for the win and be aggressive early in the game. You're not going to lose a game in the first quarter of a game or second quarter of a game. In fact, I would contend that earlier in the game, in the first quarter, second quarter of a ball game, is a better time to actually be aggressive and take chances, especially in the playoffs. I don't think you're going to lose the game in the first quarter or the second quarter, right? If you need to do it later in the game, you need to do it. But I would come out fast and furious. I would come out aggressive. I'm not saying that you blitz every down. I'm not even saying that you blitz every series of downs. But I'm saying that I would be more aggressive with a few calculated, it's calculated risk versus just vanilla, basic, conservative. We're going to sit back for the entire first half. Let's see what they're doing to us. We're going to run, just rush 4 guys off the line and see if they can get home. They're not getting home. And it shows in the sack numbers. The defense has been solid, but the defense has potential to actually be a menace if you can actually apply pressure. And you've got some speed guys out there. I would definitely put together some blitz packages, maybe even that you can practice this week in a meaningless game against the Jets where it doesn't matter and you're not really going to get burned deep because, frankly, they want to lose the game anyways. They want the highest pick that they can get to get a quarterback. So this is a great week to beta test a few packages, a few blitz packages, and try them earlier in the game.
Much improved to where it was the start of the season. I've talked about this for a couple weeks now. These young defensive linemen are coming on. Milano played well once again. The backers are playing at a good
Milano
level.
Does look really good.
The coverage is fantastic. I think this defense, to your point, is peaking. And I think a lot of people are going to say, well, you just don't want to face a really good run game. I kind of see it differently. I think that if this defense...
I think we just did face a really good run game in Philly. Now, I know it's not as elite as last year, but we faced a really good run game. They did good. Second half, they really shut down the Eagles. I think they had 17 yards in the second half. The defense has really come a long way, and they're doing great, but just more pressure. More pressure. Don't allow the quarterback, especially these young quarterbacks, don't allow them to get comfortable. Don't allow them to get into a rhythm of the game. If you allow them to feel like they're in the game longer than they really should feel that way, then that's a you problem. There's no reason for you to allow a young quarterback like Drake May in his first playoff appearance, if that's who you play against, or a Trevor Lawrence, to allow them to sit back there, get into a rhythm, and feel comfortable. Bring some heat early in the game.
is going to get had, it's going to be by an highly effective, very much so clicking on-point passing game. Because if it's not, you won't have success throwing the football against them.
Yeah, and you mentioned this defense, and certainly they showed against the Philly offense. I mean, they had Saquon, who was the Offensive Player of the Year last year. They're the defending world champions, and they held him without a completion in the second half, which is unbelievable. How do they pull that out more consistently? That second half performance. We've seen it off and on this entire year, right, where they've had a great second half of a game or made some adjustments. How do they do that more consistently, and why is it so maddening when they come out and then the Patriots snap off like 2 huge runs against them, that kind of thing?
What he's asking is a great question. It's not about the teams that snap off a big run against us. That's just going to happen sometimes. You can't really stuff like that happens. You don't really see us get beat over the top with big passes a lot, so you can't be perfect, all right? Some of that's going to happen, but the short answer to his question, we'll see what Dan has to say. The short answer is really what I've been banging the drum on, is you need to bring pressure earlier in the ball game and try to kind of create that early. Take chances early. Be aggressive early. You're not going to lose the game in the first quarter if you bring a couple of design blitz packages at a young quarterback in the playoffs like a Drake May and try to get him off his spot, try to get him to turn the ball over, try to get him off to a bad start. You're not going to lose the game. If they score a touchdown, I mean, playing vanilla defense, they usually go down, they score a couple touchdowns on us in the first half, we figure out what they're going to do, we adjust. During that period of time, throw a couple of design blitzes at them and try to see if you can create some havoc.
Yeah, I think it's just hopefully figuring out what the offense's plan or how they're trying to attack you is sooner. I think one of the things that you realized in that game was Philly wanted to throw the ball in early downs, and they wanted to get into their play-action pass game in early downs. And so you saw a lot of what I would call like two-man in the second half in those situations. They're playing like really man-to-man underneath with 2 deep safeties or press quarters, press forward. So they're kind of playing pass-centric defenses on earlier downs. And so I think that's helped them. It's also they've played a little bit in the run game, Steve, like they've played much more downhill in the run game in the second half rather than reactionary or catch in the run game. And so I think it's just getting to that a little bit sooner. I think
hear what he said. He's saying what I'm saying. When he says downhill, he means pressure. He means coming at them. So you can also, another way that you can do this is you can design your blitz package to be run blitz. So what he's saying is when he says downhill, if they're running a nickel defense, they got a 4-man defensive line and they got 2 linebackers in the game, maybe Shaq Thompson and Milano. Run blitzing Shaq Thompson and Milano so that they're coming downhill at and through the line of scrimmage. They're run blitzing to stuff the run, and if it's play action, just continue on through to the quarterback, right? It's a run blitz or a blitz package, and if it turns out to be play action, you're already coming downhill fast and furious. Just take it right to the quarterback, try to get him off his spot, try to pressure a fast throw, try to take him down for a sack, whatever the case may be. But when he's talking about they're playing more downhill, it means that the linebackers are not sitting back in a zone waiting to see what happens and reacting and then trying to go chase down the running back. They're firing into the line, right? They're firing through a gap. They're trying to meet the back in the hole or in the backfield.
Playoffs help that. You're going to have so much more of a finite focus. You guys know in the season it's week to week to week to week to week, and oh my gosh, and you're trying to take care of everything, where in the playoffs it becomes so hyper-focused. Steve, you know this far greater than I. So hyper-focused and so game plan specific and centric. And so I think that's going to bode well.
What do you make of how varied and voluminous the blitz packages have been in recent weeks for this Bills defense? Because they're not just spinning the dial. They're using stuff that, we haven't seen all season. I'm wondering how deep this book is. But like Dorian Williams, for example.
It's not that the book is deep, it's that they're getting more creative, and credit to the coaches for doing that. This is what a guy like, we keep saying Spagnola or Spags in Kansas City. He's known for designing 1 or 2. It's not that they have a deep book. you can go into a game and say, hey, we're going to design these 2 or 3 blitz concepts that we think would work well against this team. You got a running quarterback, maybe you're going to have something coming off the corner for one of your blitzes, different things like that, and then they implement those. But I think the only difference that I'm saying is try to implement that a little earlier in the game, right? Don't wait to the second quarter, third quarter of a game where you're down by 10 or 14 or 21. Bring it early in the game and try to create some, uncertainty and some havoc for a young quarterback, especially like Drake May or Trevor Lawrence, that doesn't have the postseason experience. Because if they make a big mistake early in the game, you're going to be in their head. You're going to be in their head early, and that's a benefit to you.
Example, he comes wrapping around and absolutely cleans Fred Johnson's clock on a play. Yeah. I haven't seen that play all season, but maybe that and the deployment of linebackers as their primary speed rushers here in recent weeks.
Yeah, one, it's really smart because those fire zones and or simulated pressures, you're not exposing coverage. Two, you're allowing speed to get on edges for those offensive linemen or against offensive linemen. And I don't know if it's Bobby Babbitt's bag, if that's necessarily his past, or if it's McDermott tapping into his past from Philly with Johnson and whatnot. And so it's awesome. I got some notes. I mean, just a ridiculous fire zone. So, there's some really good pressure.
They do a good job with fire zone. I think what he's saying is when they bring someone from the secondary, you're going to see a lot of times where they bring a guy like Benford off the corner, like the Bengals game where he makes the big interception. They bring Benford off the corner quite a bit. They really like that blitz. They also bring their safety, I forget his name, the guy from Utah that played with Kincaid. They bring him a lot on blitzes. He typically doesn't get home, but he typically does get through the line quickly and get the quarterback off his spot. Right, so they do a good job with when he says fire zone. They still have a 2 or 3 cover 2 or cover 3 look where they're not exposing themselves over the top, but they're bringing someone so fast from the secondary that the quarterback doesn't have time to go through his progressions and figure out where the weakness in the zone is, because to account for the guy that's coming. And so typically it creates a lot of problems for the offense.
Packages going on right now. And I think that's something that, if you look at teams in the AFC and the teams that you're likely going to have to be playing against, the Chargers have struggled with that this year. The Jags have struggled with that this year. Houston's been better with it, but Houston struggled big time last week against it. And so, yeah, this is something that...
Now, as far as the playoff picture goes, I think actually for us, unfortunately, we're the 7 seed, I think is actually best for us. I'd rather come out of the gates and play New England. I don't really want to go to Jacksonville. Their defense is second in takeaways, and their offense, they're on a 12-game win streak. Their offense is playing good ball. I really don't want to play Jacksonville. The 2 teams I really don't want to play, I don't want to play at Jacksonville. I don't want to play at Houston. If I can avoid going to Houston or Jacksonville, I think I would like to. I'm really hoping that Houston goes down in the first game. Maybe Baltimore gets into the playoffs. Maybe they are able to edge out Pittsburgh, and maybe Lamar has some magic and can take Houston out of the mix. But I really absolutely do not want to go to Houston, because their defense is just something different in Houston with the crowd noise. When it's difficult to communicate on offense, it's difficult to audible, it's difficult to slide protection. They get off the ball too. I do not want to go to Houston. That's the team I don't want to play the most at Houston. Everybody else, I could care less. I'm not intimidated by Denver in the least. We beat them last year in the playoffs. It wasn't even close. I don't know why they've got a great record and they're well coached. I don't think that they're really that. I think they're kind of a paper tiger. As far as New England goes, I don't really love the idea of playing them for a third time in New England, because if the refs get involved, it could very well go their way. Really, that game was very close, and a couple calls the other way could have been the difference. But I'd rather play New England than Jacksonville, in my opinion.
I think has become, it's really interesting because it's a very much so 180 turn to what this team was defensively like 2 or 3 years ago. We saw this, and I know we talked about it a little bit last year, that this is what they started to turn up to more and more. I think that they're turning it up even more so as you get into this final game and into the playoffs. And I think it's going to be a calling card of their defense. If they're able to go on a run, that blitz package is going to be, and it puts speed. And it's hard for offenses, Chris. It just is, because it's a who's who in the zoo type of thing is what we call it. Who's the blitzer? Who's the dropper? And it's not, I could know you're the blitzer. Who do I want blocking that blitzer? Because linebackers, good blitzing linebackers are really difficult to deal with. Do I have a back that I really trust can block them? Or do I have to waste an offensive lineman on them? Great. If you're going to waste.
Another thing I'll note, too, that I've seen in different ball games, even against us a couple of times, I think Houston did this to us this year. Sometimes it's not so much even pressuring the quarterback or sacking the quarterback, but I've seen it where, like, let's say a defensive lineman is engaged with your center, and then a defensive end comes around on the stunt, and on the way through the line, they blast the center and literally blow up the opposing team's offensive line, like literally blow the center or the guard onto his back and just blow the line out. And there's something about that. There's an optic of that. There's an optic, a look about that, where you see your lineman literally get blown up, literally get run over. He's on his back. And whether or not you get the ball away or you get on to the next play, there's something about that really shows like you're in a dogfight, right? And so I wouldn't mind see the Bills get into that kind of nastiness of it, where they come through and they literally blow up the lineman on the opposing team, just to set the tone for the game. I don't know if they have that level of nasty in them, but I've seen it done against them. And you see right away, like, you're in for a fight when you see your lineman getting knocked clear off their feet.
An offensive lineman on them, then your back's going to have to block a defensive lineman. And so that's why those packages are really difficult to handle.
So we know that going into the playoffs, we kind of feel like in Buffalo, you kind of got the best player in the group, right? I mean, Josh is going to be as good as any quarterback they're going to – even, the way –
depending on the injury, depending on his foot, depending on whether he can actually put the cape on and run in key moments and actually complete plays in the red zone, get into the end zone, move the chains. It depends on how his foot's feeling, really.
Trevor Lawrence is playing. Josh, when he's on and feeling good, I mean, he's as good as anybody and probably going to give the Bills an edge at that spot. But if you're talking about giving him an extra thing, like this Brandon Cooks thing, going deep, if they've got this added dimension to their offense, who's going to benefit more? Is it Josh, or is it a guy like Kincaid, or maybe James Cook benefits most because now a defense has to think about this offense a little differently? What other offensive player is going to get something out of this boost that maybe a Brandon Cooks in this deep game might give the Bills offense?
Yeah, the number one name that comes out to me would be Dalton Kincaid. He doesn't need it. I think he's a really big matchup. We've talked about that, and I've been adamant about it. If they got Kincaid, they're going to be okay. I'd also say Shakir, just because of less people down near the football, a little bit more yards after the catch in those situations. I was shocked to see them not run the football more effectively. I want to credit Philly for the way that their plan was and filling on the backside and stuff. But I would say Kincaid, just because, I mean, Steve, I don't know if you've heard me say this. I often talk about offensive football in an accordion. And if you don't have vertical speed to stretch that accordion out, I was talking about it a little bit last night on our broadcast, it's shrunk, right? So
yeah, and we know this. This is what we're complaining about a lot in Buffalo. Everybody knows this. This drum has been beaten to death by everybody, including myself. Hopefully Cooks can stretch the field or the accordion a little bit. But, I mean, it's so obvious and ridiculous. But, I mean, we are a run-after-the-catch offense. And can you imagine how dangerous Khalil Shakir would actually be if the safeties had to move back and the accordion had to open up? Because really what makes the shell move back it's not just having a speed guy like Cooks. It's not just that. It's having a speed guy that the defense knows can beat man coverage. Because what happens when you got a speed guy that can beat man coverage, now all of a sudden you have to lean a safety over towards that guy. And if you know, like, for example, that's what made Stephon Diggs so deadly with the Bills and why defenses would shift to try to take him out of the game, because they knew that Stephon Diggs could beat man coverage off the line of scrimmage. And so you had to move either a linebacker or a safety to his side of the field. You had to go over there and help that corner. And so that's what really helps stretch the defense. It's not just having speed. That's why you see a guy like when Mecole Coleman was in there, or a couple of the other guys that we've tried at the, with the speed, like, even to be honest, like Shavers is pretty fast, but he doesn't have the respect of the defense where he's going to beat man coverage, he's going to beat that guy, and he's fast enough to hurt you over the top. Cooks may have that, but this is where next year you want a more elite person. If you think about some of the trades that could have been made, like Jalen Waddle has that. He has the speed where the defense, if the defense does not respect that Jalen Waddle will beat man coverage and can take it to the house, then they'll get beat over the top. Justin Jefferson for Minnesota. If the defense doesn't respect him with more than just man coverage, but with a safety and linebacker help, he'll beat him over the top. Right? We don't have that guy necessarily. We got Cooks is quick and he's made a couple of really good contested catches, but he may not have the respect of the defense to truly stretch it yet.
There's less space to work in for those intermediate players. You got a player like Cooks that can at least lift some coverage, impact the deep.
He's kind of saying the same thing. He says you got a player like Cooks that can at least lift the coverage. See, he also doesn't know. Cooks doesn't necessarily, at his age right now and his ability, the defense doesn't respect that Cooks can consistently hurt them over the top. He might get a play here or a play there, but he can't truly lift the defense and create the space underneath.
The deepest part of the field, you're just creating a bigger secondary window for those guys that are those secondary type of receivers to eat in.
And secondary receivers, it's our whole offense, right? Tight ends, running backs, and Khalil Shakir bubble screens. For some reason, Khalil Shakir, they won't run him on any route except for an orbit motion or a bubble screen or something like that. Apparently, he can't do a slant. He can't do a levels in crossing route. He can't do anything like that. He can only do a bubble screen.
So I think Kincaid, but I would tell you this. I think there's a great benefit. If Cooks is able to have that type of, at least a sliver of that impact, I think
a sliver of that impact. See, he's saying the same thing that I'm saying. We hope that Cooks can have that impact in the playoffs. If he has that impact, we really maybe do have a chance. But if he can even have a sliver of that impact, which means that in the game, they've got to get him a couple of shots down the field, and he's got to earn the respect of the defense, because at his age and his stage of his career, the defense doesn't really respect that Cooks can or will be able to hurt them, because they know our tendencies is to throw the ball very short. So you have to go out there and establish that, and you have to get Cooks that respect from the defense in order to get them to move back a little bit. You really want the safeties at a 15 to 20 to 15 to 22 yard depth off the line. That's kind of the sweet spot. Right now, the safeties are at like 15 yards, right? So everything is compressed into the line of scrimmage. They're playing the under routes. They're sitting on tight ends, backs, wide receivers, because everybody's running small 4, 5, 6 yard routes.
It's a great benefit for everybody, because margins, plays in the playoffs. One play loses you a game. One big explosive play can lose you a game. And defensive coaches will obsess over that. And I think that if he's able to provide that, it's going to be beneficial for everyone.
Looks like based on who is going to be in lineups for teams in Week 18 and who will not, there's a good chance Denver gets the 1 seed and beats the Chargers without Herbert playing. And they obviously have something to play for. They want to win and catch the 1 seed and get a bye week, which would leave New England presumably as the 2, assuming they beat Miami at home. Jacksonville probably the 3. And with Chargers lost, the Bills with a win over the Jets would move up to 6 and presumably go to Jacksonville. You mentioned they're a hot team. They've won 7 in a row,
and they're saying presumably Jacksonville, but you see Jacksonville has not clinched their division, which is an interesting caveat. I really don't want to play this seed because if Houston wins the division, I don't want to go to Houston. And honestly, I really don't want to go to Jacksonville. The upside of going to Jacksonville is that the weather is good, the weather's nice, and we can probably thrive in good weather, right? I mean, Cook is a great running back. Josh is a great quarterback. Our offense can function at a very high level in this environment, depending on how Jacksonville's defense plays, which is what worries me. They have the second most takeaways in the league, so that's why I don't really love going to Jacksonville or playing Houston.
Dan, we've often seen like teams with long winning streaks. It's very hard to sustain that going into the postseason and win an 8th in a row, a 9th in a row, a 10th in a row. Some people actually see Buffalo's loss this past week as a little bit of a blessing because you get to, Steve's.
It's not a blessing to lose. That's bullshit. That's just dumb to even say that. It's stupid. You play to win the game and you want to be competitive, and it's not a blessing that you lost and you don't have to be on a long win streak. Look, it's a week-to-week league. It's not good when you lose. If we would have won, New England wouldn't have clinched the AFC East. They'd have to win this week. Who knows? They lose. Historically they play tough against Miami, whether Tua's in or not. Historically, Miami wins random games against New England. So you knocked yourself out of contention for the division by losing that game. So it's not a blessing. It's stupid. The guy was wide open. We could have hit it and won, but the offense was pathetic nonetheless.
Putting his hand up because you get to kind of reset the deck and everything. I'm not saying Jacksonville can't win an 8th game in a row this week.
This guy just sounds stupid. You get to reset the deck. You can reset the deck anyways. We all know McDermott's philosophy. It's a week-to-week league. Every week is different. You're trying to go 1-0. You're not resetting the deck on anything. This is just all stupid talk.
And a 9th in a row in the postseason. But is there something to be said for that, sustaining that level of play? Because as Steve says all the time, in the playoffs, you got to play well on that day, no matter who you're playing.
Yep. Yeah, it's the way I look at the Rams loss in Atlanta last night as well. These guys are human beings. Buffalo, I don't care what any player says, and I'm not trying to knock them. They know that winning this past weekend really didn't help them that much after New England winning. Like it wasn't going to. You're banking on New England losing. I think the same with the Rams. Like the Rams really were no longer in the division race. So it's like, okay, are we really going to kill ourselves for seeding and whatnot and avoid? If you want to go win a Super Bowl, you're gonna have to play a good team and beat a good team, right? And so, yeah, I think it's really hard to win for a really long period of time. I think that we see teams have a game or two blip in December that we know are really good teams, and they don't maybe play their best football. Maybe they're not necessarily fully engaged. Maybe not they're totally locked in. Maybe there's a fraction of a disinterest. They're coming off of a holiday weekend, all that stuff. I do think that is a reality. Jacksonville is a really, really, really good football team. They're really well coached. Trevor Lawrence is as confident as any quarterback in the NFL right now. Their 3 wide receivers are playing at a very...
Yeah, I don't like Jacksonville. And the one thing I'll say about Trevor Lawrence that he's doing really well is he's running the ball really well. So whenever Jacksonville is inside of the red zone, I mean, he looks like a younger Josh Allen. Like when Josh was just a little bit more athletic. Not that he's not right now, but, Trevor Lawrence is a real threat to rush the football into the end zone, inside of the red zone. So he really puts pressure on your defense, in those situations where they need a first down, where they need a touchdown. I really don't like going to Jacksonville because of that reason. He adds that dimension to the game even more than Drake May, maybe even as much as Josh Allen right now. And their defense has the second most takeaways in the league.
Very high level. Their tight end Strange is a really good pass catching threat. They don't run the football very effectively. So I would tell you that I mentioned before how good the coverage is in Buffalo. It'd be a really fun matchup to watch that coverage unit versus that pass game. This defense in Jacksonville takes the football away as well. So, yeah, I just think it's a long season. And for teams that finally get into the playoffs but no longer division and number 1 is not really a viable option, I do think that it's just like, all right, take a deep breath. We got a long road ahead of us, and there's still, if you're going to be one of those couple final teams, 4 or 5 weeks left.
Yeah. And how, Dan, the Bills, Brownie and I are conjecturing that Josh may take a snap.
Look at the passing touchdowns here. Stafford with 42. Goff with 33, Drake May with 30, Josh is at 25. Of course, we know he has another 14 rushing touchdowns. He's got 39 total touchdowns. Darnold, who's having a great year, 25. But, this is disappointing to me to see Allen with 25 passing touchdowns tied with Jalen Hurts, who's very pedestrian. It's kind of disappointing. Honestly, if Allen was playing for the LA Rams, the LA Rams with Sean, what's their coach's name? Sean McVay. The way he runs that vertical scheme and the receivers they have with Puka Nacua and when Devontae Adams is healthy, it's my contention if Allen was playing for the LA Rams, he would probably actually have 50 passing touchdowns, 50. He would probably contend for the all-time passing touchdown record. Because Sean McVay is a dog. He'll put 50 points on the board every game if he can. His mindset is it's your job to stop us. And that's what I'm talking about. That's what's missing with Sean McDermott. Sean McDermott is not that dog. Sean McDermott is the opposite. Sean McDermott wants to limit the number of possessions that each team gets. He wants to ground and pound. He wants to grind the clock, long drives, grind the clock, keep the game close, and win it in the end. It's really old school football, and I hate that philosophy, honestly, because in the end, ultimately, there's a lot of teams that really aren't on our level, and we're keeping them in games and keeping the game closer because that's how we play. That's our style. Right, we want to basically limit the number of possessions. We want longer drives, sustained drives, ground and pound, and don't turn the football over. You kind of got to play a more perfect game, and you've got to physically dominate every opponent in the run game. Where Sean McVay is just, he's going to do some running. He's got a running back that's over 1,000 yards, but he's also going to throw for 42 touchdowns on his team, and his passing game is going to be elite. And it's just the difference. That's what you get with an excellent offensive mind. Drake May, watch Drake May in the years to come. He's going to win an MVP. He's probably going to win a Super Bowl. Honestly, if Drake May wins a Super Bowl before Josh Allen, I wouldn't be surprised because Josh McDaniels, their offensive philosophy, and that team snuck up on us and took our division a lot sooner than we thought was possible. And their offense is going to be good for years to come. New England's probably going to make very big investments in their offense this offseason. And New England has the same, I'll tell you right now, New England with Vrabel and with Josh McDaniels, they have the same mentality as Sean McVay. They've got that dog mentality. They've got that, I know I want to get the 1 seed is the shortest path to the Super Bowl. They're going to be playing to win a lot of games, which means they're going to be aggressive on offense. They're going to trust their quarterback with a lot more in terms of throwing the ball down the field, in terms of making big investments at wide receiver and in the offense. And they're going to go for it, just like Sean McVay does with the Rams. They're going to be that team every year. We're going to have to contend with them, and every year, I have a feeling every year Buffalo fans are just going to be disappointed to see how pedestrian Allen's passing numbers look. It looks like the head coach is kind of tied one hand behind his back because they don't trust him.
Walk to the sidelines the way he did in week 17 or 18 2 years ago. Right. James Cook, same thing. I know these guys have incentives and stuff, but there's no price you can put on these guys showing up next week in the wild card round fresh and healthy. Your thoughts around the league? You got a Denver team that's gone for the 1 seed, and then if they win, they get a week off anyway completely. So there's a lot to be said for the way these teams are going to handle this in the end, particularly an AFC bracket that, with the exception of the.
And if you don't think coaching matters, look at the passer rating leaders. Goff is 3rd. Okay. The offensive coordinator for Detroit goes to Chicago. Chicago was pathetic last year. They are competing and contending for a 1 seed, and they won their division this year, while the Lions, who have one of the top passers in the NFL, didn't even make the playoffs. So you tell me if coaching matters. Coaching matters. The Lions lost their offensive coordinator who completely turned the entire Bears franchise around in 1 season. And on the flip side, you've got a passing rating leader whose team isn't even going to be in the playoffs. So coaching and philosophy and intensity and intentionality, that all matters.
AFC North, it's all set. How knotted up do you get over the 5, 6, or 7 seed and seeding like that?
I think health matters more than seeding. I think if you're a legitimate team and you're, as a coaching staff, you can take a step back and say,
At this point, it does. I mean, we're in the 7th seed, so whatever, we clinched a playoff spot. Nobody needs to win the game against the Jets. It's a meaningless game. Honestly, I would beta test a few blitz packages early in the game. Try something new. Maybe come up with, don't worry about not showing it on tape. Come up with something new. Try to get aggressive and figure out, maybe there's a different, blitz that can get home. Maybe beta test something like that, But other than that, this week is meaningless against the Jets. It's playoff time.
Can we win it? Can we realistically win it? I know there's going to be 14 teams in the playoffs. Nobody believes that there's 14 teams that can actually win the Super Bowl. If we can realistically win it, our health is way more important than a seeding or avoiding.
Now, you look at the rushing yard leaders. I would love to see Cook get the rushing title. I think it would be a great achievement for the season. He deserved the contract that he got. Derrick Henry's who I worry about. He had over 200 yards last week, so he could very well have another 200-yard game, which would put him at 1669. So, he's still got some work to do. I don't know if they're going to let him do it. I mean, I'd like to see Cook have a 100-yard game and really just be the front runner for the NFL rushing yard leader. He deserves it. He's an excellent back. That was a great signing, and I hope that they keep him for years to come.
Somebody or catching somebody. It's the playoffs. Anybody can beat anybody on any given day. So trying to sit here and avoid this team, catch that team sounds great. Like everyone was talking about it with the NFC South. Like, oh man, you want to be the 5 seed so you can play the NFC South winner. I mean, the Seahawks lost to the Buccaneers. The Rams lost to the Panthers. Those are the NFC.
I don't want to hear about the Rams lost to the Panthers. That's Vegas, in my opinion. There was like 93% of the money in the parlays and the bets were all on the Rams. So you can't tell me that Vegas doesn't have an influence where they can get the refs to make certain calls. Like, you got people in New York City in a skybox making, calls on penalties after the play's over. It's really ridiculous. You got to remember, football is entertainment. It's basically these days it's like WWF wrestling. Yeah, it's real to a certain extent, but if you don't think that the multi-billion-dollar gambling industry has an effect when they see that the Rams have 93% of the money is on the Rams and they're playing the Carolina Panthers, you don't think that they could call in I don't think that game even, those kind of games, like I felt that way about Buffalo in Miami too. Buffalo and Miami, it was the same thing. It was like 94% of the money was on Buffalo. The money line, the bets, the parlays, everything was on Buffalo, and Buffalo lost that game, and that was one of the games that really cost us. But I think that was the influence of gambling.
See South contenders, so I think health. I think if you're a team that legitimately believes you can win, rest your guys, get them fresh, and you got a really big 3-week stretch.
Dan, thanks as always. Have fun on the broadcast Saturday. We'll be watching.
Thanks, guys.